Right now, I'd like to show you a game that was played between one of my most favorite grandmasters, Yasser Seirawan, who is actually playing versus Milan Vukic. Again, two pretty solid grandmasters. So let's take a look and see what this whole game was about. What happened in the game and how did it develop. After the c4, knight f6, knight c3, g6, Seirawan played g3, castles, and e4. Now this is the so-called Botvinnik variation. If I have to be honest, this is probably one of my most favorite openings, and the reason for it is because it's so easy to play it. The first thing that it gives you is a perfect support in the middle, and then of course we're gonna have the chance to develop with the move of knight of the e2, and maybe focus our attention onto the d3, castles, and so on and so forth. So this is a great way to go forward. And actually, after that type of a move, black played the move c5, and so white did the move of knight g to e2. Great variation. The setup's good, the activity is excellent, and we're actually taking on the opportunity to build up on the king's side. So that's a great thing. So black did knight ge2, black did knight c6, a3, a5, castles, d6, and d3. So this was definitely a very good setup. What you realize is that with those three pawns, black is taking away the squares of d5 and b5, so that basically black doesn't have the ability or the chance to shoot. And so actually when he doesn't have that ability, we're ready to get going. Maybe we could think about h3, and then we could have the possibility of playing bishop to the e3. So things are quite good. This is very, very interesting. Now, after continuing with the move of, so let's see here, then black played with the move of knight of the e8. So what's going on next? So after that continuation, in this case, you see first and foremost, white does get to continue with the move of bishop to the e3. Very important. And so black plays the move of knight of the d4. And then, of course, basically white plays with the move of bishop takes the d4. It's a great example of exchanging and really taking the chance to set up. So we could have the exchange being, played out. Most of black's own pieces are fairly badly placed. We have a good shot of shooting and just exchanging the bishop. So let's just do it. The secret, oftentimes, of playing in these positions is trade off any of the opponent's good pieces, because if you ever see a good piece of the opponent sitting inside your territory and causing you trouble like that, you will have issues. So the moment that actually black saw that idea in this case, white exchanged, takes, and of course after that type of position there's knight of the b5, and so basically black plays a queen to the d6, and then of course white plays the move pawn up to the a4. It's just, this is a great way to go forward. We have the a4, we can have the b5 square under control. We've got the possibilities of playing eventually with moves like rook b1. White has good space. It's like he really has the activity now. And take a look at how we do it. Taking the chance to really build up the control is brilliant. We can have rook b1 and b4 most likely. We can have the chance to open up more files quite quick. So let's go for it this way. Step by step. Remember that, though. Most of the bad pieces that black is having are down on the back. They're unable to realize any sort of pressure or activity. So we're using that opportunity in order to build up our own play on the opposite area. We could very quickly go ahead with moves like pawn up to the b4, and then we're going to advance. So after a4, black does knight to the c7, f4, knight here, h3. And then you realize the danger. So like white's intending for certain to make a move of pawn up to the f4. And see, so this is all you want to do. Forget about the rest. All we do is to set more pieces instantly on that side of the board. We can have G4, we can have the activity, like of F5. You've got more stuff to do on this side of the board, and it's a wonderful move. What if black plays for the move E5? Well, he does that kind of a candidate because if it looks like maybe he could block us, so that's good. And white plays F5. See, the interesting thing about pawns is that pawns can help you to take a lot of space from your opponent away. And because those pawns are effectively preventing black from reaching out, from really bringing his pieces all forward, we can go with many different moves, whether it's going to be with the g4 plus knight g3, or whether it's going to be with a queen to the d2. It doesn't really matter. The key is that we're just going to be very powerful and very useful, and that in that regard, step by step, things work great. All right, well, I gotta say, this is not too bad to look at, and surely after the move of f5, black played bishop h6, and then there is the move h4. Great stuff. What is actually happening also in this position is that white now goes on to advance those pawns, and he wants to advance them so far, so much further, so that they could reach very powerful and attacking positions. We've got g4 plus g5 as an idea. We've got black's king side and everything down there really in a bad or difficult position. So this looks excellent. And what about black? Okay, I don't know. That's the problem. I don't really think that he's got much to do. After it was played, black played bishop to the d7, and then white plays king h2. So this is an excellent way to go for it. We've got the king to h2, and we're also getting the opportunity to think of a move like pawn up to the g4. If the g4 pawn moves, then we can have the chance to play with the g5. We could use those comfortable pawns, and then we could realize different sort of threats on that side of the board. So let's not worry about anything else. It's a great line of thought. Step by step. Let's just do it. And shortly after this was played, of course, after h4, with the idea of g4, black has much more to be concerned. So he did the move of knight c5 going forth. That was a good move by him. I mean, you could see why that's done. Black is setting up, but you understand that it's nothing big, because while white is creating his structure that will serve him in the long run, black is trying to run around and just move his pieces closer. Now, I think that comparing the two different approaches is unfair to black, because after all, he's really like trying to set up the pieces. But the pieces can go back or move away. The pieces are not likely going to stay or remain on their permanent positions. However, when we talk about the way white is going to move and how he is going to limit plenty of the black pieces, that matters a lot. And so after knight c5, white just played the move of bishop to the h3. A wonderful looking move. As you could see, there's g4 plus g5 that will be played out very shortly. This is really interesting. And look at black. His own development is so difficult to play with that when white really gets to do the g4 to the moves like g4 plus g5, you will see the almost the impossibility for black to go for anything else. That was a very interesting point in the game. Right upon that move was done, with the g4 available and everything else that's going to happen, obviously black had a lot to fear about. And what are we doing? So I guess now it's like just such a big difficulty for him. They can't do all too many things. Black played right now the candidate of g5. I have to admit, it's not a great position, and you could see why. Black is having problems for a reason, and the biggest of this reason is that with this king being on the backside and many of the other pieces just feeling so backward, it's going to be easy to really deliver major threats as white. So white knew that, and he was just looking for a way to prove black wrong. What was his move? After bishop h3, black did g5. Now you might want to take a second here to think carefully. It's a great position. We've got good space, good pieces. The possibilities feel relevant. The activity is there. So we're really well lined up with all of our forces. The only key question is how to go from there, where to do this. And of course, the big answer to that question is we've got to be thinking about the area where we have most potential. That's now the king side, that's for sure. But now what we're also looking for in this case is that, just we play with the move of knight takes to the d4. So, for example, after continuing with that type of a move, we could play with the move of queen to the g4, knight to the, and h6 to the g, queen h5 also looks really wonderful in that moment. And do you see what I'm saying? It's just like the point is white's whole intention is going to help him to build on that king side area and start playing. Because the pawns create what I would call the outline of your attack. From this point on, we have this excellent, just direction. Every piece is good. It's well placed. It's useful. And so this is really quite relevant. What about black? I'm not sure actually in this case, but he's certainly having a problem. Knight takes to the d4, pawn takes to the d4, and we have the move of queen to the h5 in this position. So it's like a really wonderful setup. Most of white's own pieces are now being incredibly well placed as they continue the attack. Every move that we do is a really important threat. And you could see with the h6 being threatened, with the black king being exposed, and you name all those type of moves that he has to worry about, white is doing fantastic. He's got the way to attack. What about black? Well, I don't know. It's the problem. Milan Vukic played f6. He realized that after bishop to the g7, f6, and queen takes g, that would have been a pretty big destruction. So he couldn't really play it like that. He had to figure out some other way. He played with f6, hoping to give up the bishop, but at least maintain the integrity of his structure. Unfortunately, it didn't help because after white captured the bishop on the f6, h6, there was bishop takes b and 8x to the b, and nothing's changed for black. He's still under a severe attack that white is making thanks to his great queen and a couple other pieces, and this is just big. Right after that move, apparently the game is almost over. Black plays g4 in a desperate attempt to close the lines up and make sure that there's no real tactic out there. He just locks it down. But it's really not working. I mean, after the g4, all white has to do is a rook f4, and then you realize why that's not a good idea. We've got the activity, rook to the g4 is happening. Black is in a desperate position to defend, and he can't quite do that, so that's great. G takes h, check, king f7, rook to the g7. The king comes right back running at the e8 square, but this is the time where white plays simply queen takes h7. And it's a great thing. So we've got the rook, the queen, the chance to advance maybe against the e7, and it's a wonderful position. King d8. Now you might want to think about this position because I'd consider it rather critical. White has a wonderful looking queen, a good looking rook, and a perfect position for an advance and attack. The only question is how to use this because, being well placed and having good pieces is one thing. But, really being able to take advantage of this is a different type of idea. So, how does white get to utilize the current set of forces, well lined and advanced, to form pressure against black? This is not a very easy question. So let's just think for a second and try to figure it out. What to do now? Well, truth be told, the one thing that I believe white wanted to do was to play with b4. That is perfect. It sets up not just the threat against the knight and the challenge against the a5 pawn, but it also gets us ready to open the files. When the lines open, or if the lines open like this will do, then there is going to be practically no stopping. We don't want to stop. We want to make sure that every single move is applying pressure again and again and again versus the hopeless looking position that black has to handle. One of the biggest tactics in these positions is the ability of strength. Bishop, the rook and the queen, keeping the extra pressure, and the majority of the white pieces of the black pieces down behind it. He can't do anything. This is why it is such a very brilliant, let's say, idea to keep him there for a little bit longer. And the more he stays in this awful position, the more we create these type of tactics big time. So b4, very strong. Black played king c8, white does bx to the c, and h5. We've got a queen and a rook that are overwhelmingly powerful. We've got the majority of black's pieces that feel like fairly away. And we've got an attack that continues to grow with every move. So it's after h5. Of course, there's h6 that will definitely come into play. So it's like the queen and rook are great. Black's pieces, not so much. So white's winning. Great stuff. This game shows the power of an efficient pawn structure you could set up from the very beginning of the game and what it takes to build it. I like the piece activity, and that's why black's maneuvers were good. However, they could never compare to what white achieved simply by following the concept that if his pawns can take away the long-term possibilities for the pieces to attack, then we're going to have a great advantage. And that's exactly what happened as white played h3, bishop h3, h4, bishop h3, queen h5, and so forth, given that black was so far back and unable to make anything good to help his position. Very instructive example of the power of build-up and a successful pawn structure you can utilize in the longer run.